My name is Ben Delgado. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself. I am the programming director at Film Scene in Iowa City and also an Art House Convergence board member. Welcome. Welcome to everyone who is steadily joining us. I know we have quite a few people registered, so I'm just going to let people come on in. We're only a couple minutes past start time. This is, of course, our monthly webinar Zoom meeting for the Art House Convergence. And today I'll be moderating a discussion on science on screen. We've been doing kind of specific talks here first Tuesday of every month. This time around, we're going to talk about this very special program with some very special guests. And as many of you already know, Science on Screen provides the opportunity for creative pairings of current, classic, cult, and documentary films with lively introductions by notable figures from the world of science, technology, medicine, and etc. Using award-winning films to do so, and maybe not so. The organization grants to nonprofit cinemas supported by the Coolidge Corner Theatre Foundation and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. But I will stop talking about that specifically because we do have, as I mentioned, some special guests who are going to be talking about that very soon. Let me see. I'm just waiting for folks to continue to roll in, and I'll take a sip of water. And I think we're about at a third of the registered guests. So just waiting for people to come on in. All right. As people continue to roll in, I will briefly introduce our guests who will then take it away. We're on a pretty tight schedule today. We've got a lot to go over, and we definitely want to leave room for a Q&A. So today we're going to have Beth Gilligan, Deputy Director of the Coolidge Corner Theatre and Program Director for Science on Screen, as well as Kristen McCracken, Program Manager for Science on Screen, joining us to talk about the program, get into the details, and of course answer your questions. And following their presentation of the overall program, we'll have some testimonials from a handful of current participants in Science on Screen. Logan Crow, Executive Director of the Frida Cinema, Orange County's only nonprofit theater. Moises Esparza, Exhibitions Director for Media Arts San Diego. And lastly, but of course not leastly, Yasmin Eisenhower, Executive Director of the Amherst Cinema and an Art House Convergence board member herself. All right, so Kristen, Beth, please go ahead and take it away. Let's talk about the program. And of course, everyone, please have your questions ready to go. Type those into the Q&A box and write them down on paper if you want for later, but make sure you're getting ready for those questions. And I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you so much, Ben. Again, my name is Beth Gilligan. I use the She, Her series. And as Ben noted, I'm Deputy Director of the Coolidge, but my primary purpose here is Program Director of Science on Screen. Kristen, do you want to introduce, and then I'll bring up the slides?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kristen McCracken. I am the program manager of the Science on Screen program. I've been working with the program for a couple of years, which means I do a lot of the communications directly with the grantee organizations. And I also manage the social media platforms for Science on Screen and the website as well to keep our website updated.
Thanks. So can everybody see this here? I guess you can't respond because it's a webinar. I take that back. Kristen, can you see it?
I can see it, yes.
Great. Okay, so I'll go right into slideshow mode. Okay, so this is just a very brief presentation overview of Science on Screen. I'm going to run through it pretty quickly because we want to. We have some great grantee cinemas here who are going to give an overview of how the program is working in their respective communities. And we also just want to make sure that there's a lot of time for questions. But okay, and this is all of us. I think Ben covered this, so we can zip right through that one. Just to give you some brief background, this is a program that began at the Coolidge in 2005. So the Coolidge Corner Theatre is based in Brookline, which is right outside of Boston. And I think the feeling at the time is we have a ton of universities, research hospitals, biotech companies in the area. So we thought it was a great way to engage that community, get them excited, get them in for some films, and also just to sort of help educate the general public about science and technology in a way that didn't feel, I don't know, overly dry or pedantic. Because what we tend to do with the unexpected pairings piece is, you know, we stray from this occasionally, but how the series sort of grew was in bringing in more popular film titles that you wouldn't necessarily at the outset think of as science films. So an early example that we use a lot is George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. We had a local psychiatrist who'd done some research on the brain and neuroscience talk about the role of the amygdala and the zombie brain. And we had an MIT physicist talk about time travel, and we showed Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So we're trying, you know, get people in the door that might be looking just to have like a fun cinematic experience, and beforehand have these introductions by all of the amazing talent that is in this area. But you know, that being said, you don't have to. We're fortunate; we do have some Nobel laureates like right around the corner, but you don't have to. I think to make the beauty of this program is it works anywhere under any circumstances. And we've had people who are science educators, science journalists. They can be high school teachers. They can be, you know, we work with a lot of professors, the local colleges. And, you know, it's really wonderful that it can work literally anywhere in this country. We've seen it work beautifully. So how this program expanded was in 2010, we partnered with the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, and huge thanks to them for you know, believing in this program. It's aligned with their mission, is really to expand public understanding of science and technology. They also fund screenplays, they provide funding to films. We'll get into a little bit more about that later. It was aligned with their mission, and they saw what was happening at Art House Cinemas. I think we're all doing extraordinary work in our communities. The outreach we do, the engagement that we have locally is not something you're going to find at a commercial theater. So we piloted this program where they gave the Coolidge a bunch of money that we in turn gave most of it away to initially, it was 8 cinemas in that initial year. And then over time, as you can see, we've grown that, and we've given away, I think, over 350 grants to 108 film and science-focused organizations in 42 states. We'd love to get to 50 states. Sloan being very science-focused is, so if you're listening and you're like an art house in South Dakota, please do apply, because they like their numbers, and you know, would love to be represented across the country. But just with that number, we always have a lot of returning grantees. We do something called like a returning grantee application if you wanted to have more minimal grant reporting requirements but still get some funding. That's a possibility for you, and we always like to welcome new grantees each year. So again, we can get into much more of that and sort of grant guidelines, that kind of thing, but this is sort of some basic background. You can see we have 40 cinemas and science organizations participating this year. They are all over the country. We have some science museums, but it's mostly art houses. And of course, if you're a film festival and you do have a year-round presence, you are eligible to apply. I think there's been confusion, and we've sort of changed the parameters about that over the years. But basically, I think what we're hearing from Sloan is, you know, when you're putting on a film festival and say it's over the course of a week, you're doing hundreds of events, you're competing against a lot, and to get attention and traction and really be rooted within a community and kind of be an ongoing presence. I think they're just looking for demonstration that it is, you know, not just a one and done kind of deal in the context of a larger festival, but there is some year-round exposure there. But all of these places are doing amazing work. Some have been with us many, many years, and then I think we had about 7 or maybe 8 first-time grantees this past year. And oh yeah, so this, I talked about this earlier, so I'll breeze through this. You can find doctors, high school chemistry teachers, science journalists are great because they are used to taking really heady, complicated scientific concepts and explaining them before the general public. So they're always a good bet if you see somebody who's, I've caught, a byline sometimes in the Boston Globe or locally to identify speakers and topics. I mean, so some of the topics also, if you scan, Science Friday has some great shows, the New York Times science section, and our local NPR affiliates. Sometimes you'll also just see a headline that will spark an idea about a speaker or,
I also think you can find experts that aren't necessarily considered scientists too, because there's like beekeepers and farmers and, people, there's just really magicians. There's different kinds of, like, it doesn't have to be all super literal in terms of, experts can be all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as they can like unpack the concepts and give you a greater understanding. Come on down, basically. Okay, so this is why science on screen. I mean, I won't spend too much time on this. I think we've all seen, the importance of understanding and believing scientists, and there are a lot of pressing issues. This was from a slide that we did during the pandemic when we were doing a presentation. But we try to, as a Coolidge, and I've seen a lot of our grantee cinemas, there's some sort of evergreen science issues out there, but certainly there's plenty of, unfortunately, very timely scientific topics like climate change and, infectious diseases and pandemics that you can tackle.
This season, AI has been one of the top topics, I will say.
Yeah, that I believe, and I'm a little bit like scared to think much about that, but glad that others are tackling it head on.
Yeah.
And these are 3 posters from films sharing untold stories, which they all do. These are all Sloan films. So one of the things that you'll hear a lot about or see on the grant application is you're required, if you are interested in applying for a Science on Screen grant, which we highly encourage you to do, you have to show a minimum of 3 films. You don't need to do more than that, actually. It can just be 3, but one of them has to be what we call in shorthand a Sloan film. And it's very easy to, if you go to scienceonscreen.org, which is the official website of Science on Screen, there's like a button you can press, which brings up all the Sloan films. They've been awarding production grants or filmmaker prizes to films probably for nearly 20 years now. So there's a pretty robust library. All 3 of these films have won Sloan Awards. And it was just a way of, Sloan's supports these films, and some of them are bigger films like The Imitation Game, but some of them are really smaller indie films. They just did a film called Linoleum. What were some of the more recent ones they've had, Kristen?
Linoleum this year, they've had After Yang was one. The current one is Blackberry was the latest one. The Pod Generation. These are films that, like, the Pod Generation was at Sundance. So they partner with some film festivals and show, they give an award. Like the Pod Generation was at Sundance and Blackberry was at SF Film, San Francisco Film.
Yeah, so some of them are like, they're smaller indie titles that I think that Sloan is supporting for their artistic and scientific vision. So it's another way of kind of getting them out in the world. And for those who are on the Art House Convergence Google group, I know there was an exchange about what's working in the post-pandemic world, which is a whole other seminar topic. But I know a lot of people talked about, and this is certainly true at the Coolidge, that nights when we have special events, we just see a lot more attendance and a lot more engagement. And when you do a Science on Screen, it's just another great way to, it's sort of an added value. You're having a speaker, and it's just another great way to kind of get people in the door. So, more untold stories. And these are also 2 Sloan films that have gotten a lot of traction, Coded Bias during the pandemic, and Bombshell was right before when that documentary was released. And these are just a few very brief examples. I think we've used these before in past presentations, just going back to, you don't need to have it be like the nature documentary with the person who's the expert on, I don't know, nature. So we try to make it kind of fun and irreverent and get excitement in the general public. Last summer, the Coolidge did a screening outdoor. We did outdoor science on screen at the Rose Kennedy Greenway. So free outdoor screenings. We saw new and different crowds. One of the films was Fast Five, which we did sort of some internal polling here in the office, and that was found to be the definitive and most loved of the Fast and Furious films. So I don't know if other people have opinions on that, but regardless, we got somebody from MIT who was working on developing driverless race cars. So she gave this amazing talk about the technology behind driverless race cars and what that would look like. And then everybody watched Fast Five, and it was a great August night. And again, you're trying not to make it be like eat your vegetables, trying to make it fun and accessible. This was one of our most popular ones, with not thinking about Airplane as being a science movie. We looked at modern flight automation with another MIT professor. Black Narcissus is just a film that I love. I think it's so beautiful, and I was sort of trying to find an excuse to show it. And but I did, there was a really interesting talk about from Rebecca Shansky from Northeastern University, and just some of the neuroscience studies and how it relates to the film, and sex difference in brain function in that instance. And then Purple Rain, again, I don't think anyone would be like, oh, that's a science film, but we had somebody who talked about music and memory. And so the speaker actually worked with Prince as a sound engineer on Purple Rain. So cool Prince stories, added bonus. Can't say no to that. So again, I'm just trying to get it. So it's always fun to do sci-fi films, and we definitely do our fair share of that. But trying to sort of think outside the box, those have been our most popular and most engaging science on screens. We had a physicist from Harvard talking about the Coen brothers, A Serious Man. There's like a very strong physics tie into that film. Again, you can sort of form connections anywhere. And in terms of programming the series, what I've done in the past is it's a combo of finding articles and fun topics, but also just thinking about what I like to see on the big screen. Like The Grapes of Wrath was one we hadn't shown in a while. And in a way, that's a film about climate change and climate refugees. So we invited Bill McKibben. He came and gave a talk about drought. Then we got to see The Grapes of Wrath, which is gorgeous on the big screen. So lots of different directions you can take it in. These are virtual highlights, which I'm not even really going to dwell on because I'm trying to just erase that whole era, speaking of science, from my brain. Just the pandemic shut down, but people were very inventive during the pandemic. So there were science on screen drive-ins. We do outdoor screenings. These are some of the theaters who featured, topical because we have Logan here. This is his marquee. And then we get into grant guidelines. Gosh, I said I would I told the organizers that I'd be ahead of time, but these are the grant guidelines, and you can go on to scienceonscreen.org to review them, because I want to stick to the time frame. And we are still allowing in-person, outdoor, hybrid, and virtual programs, and happy to answer any questions about this, but it's all spelled out on scienceonscreen.org. And most importantly, the deadlines are for applying. This year, it's August 1st, and it's a season that can take you from August through June 30th. Am I forgetting anything, Kristen? I think I've just made it. Oh yeah, and then here are questions. And
I just put everything in the website and into the chat. And also we do have a centralized social media that's at Science on Screen across platforms that you can follow. And then we will promote individual events. I promote individual events across that and update the website with all of you can browse the grantees and all the upcoming events. So, and we have a YouTube channel. Sorry, that was a lot at once.
Yeah, no, but we stayed within our time frame, so that was very scientific for us as well. Hey, there we go. Okay,
and we're here for questions at the end for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you both. Stuck the landing right on time. Kristen and Beth, thank you so much. We're gonna have our first testimonial here from Logan. So Logan, if you want to jump on,
sure.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. So this is our third year with Science on Screen. And I think as Beth sort of mentioned, our programming with the series has been informed by what are some films that we've already been wanting to play or that have been requested, and how do we kind of look at that list creatively and contextualize it and say, hey, might there be a principle here that can lend itself to a scientific conversation or presentation? And so the programming we've done over the last 3 years, it's been really exciting because it doesn't feel like we need to deviate from what we generally would program. We're very much a retro house. We do some first runs, but we're pretty much repertory with a strong focus on cult programming. And so, what I've loved about the program is that, we can look at a title like Eraserhead, which is a film that we actually ended up doing at a drive-in during the pandemic. We had the head of an organization called the Brain Institute here in Orange County come out and talk about dream theory. And it was an incredible presentation. And you're out there and it's Eraserhead and everyone's in that mode. And then we're talking about dreams, and it sort of started to segue into LSD, which then led us to working with that same professor a couple years later on Embrace of the Serpent, which is one of the Sloan films, where he did a presentation about the science of microdosing. That was really, really fascinating. I think a couple of the sort of programs that we've done that really stood out for me was we wanted to do Small Soldiers have been requested quite a bit. And, looking at that and trying to diversify the programming, we were like, what can we do with a 90s sort of family film? And so in every case, what I would do is think of the theme, or the team would, and just Google presentations and see if there was a doctor or scientist that had recently done a presentation on a theme that we were thinking of. And in Small Soldiers' case, we thought about gendering in toys. Might there be someone out there that has spoken on gender-biased gendering in toys? And we found this incredible professor, Dr. Gutman from Belgium, who, thanks to Zoom, was able to do a presentation on gendering in toys that she actually had delivered in Washington with an incredible slideshow looking at toy marketing from the 40s all the way to the present. Every professor or scientist we've reached out to has ended up being a lecturer. We haven't had one person say they're too busy or that they can't. And I have to say, Zoom has been a major reason why they've been able to become available. We have flown people down. We had someone from Northern California come out to do our presentation on Until the End of the World, where it was really interesting because as I was kind of looking back, that was 2 years ago, and that was on virtual and digital media environments. And then here we are 2 years later with Apple's presentation yesterday. So it's kind of interesting because that's all she talked about was this research and science on sort of digital media mapping in glasses and recording. And then also when we did the Stanford Prison Experiment, which is also a Sloan film, that led to a really interesting surprise where our guest speaker actually knew Dr. Philip Zimbardo, who did the Stanford Prison Experiment, and was able to get him to Zoom in to our Q&A. And it was also the 50th anniversary of that experiment. So it was really surreal having an audience go through this really intense film and formulate their opinions of the scientist, and then suddenly have that scientist on the big screen talking to them, led to an interesting Q&A. So again, there's a lot of room for creativity and flexibility. I love that. I feel that when we put these things together, I'm not concerned about might Eraserhead be too culty, might Jacob's Ladder be too horror, might Small Soldiers be too weird and commercial. It's a great program that we write these grants sort of trusting that Beth and the team will see the sort of context that this presentation is going to give to the film. And they've just been incredibly supportive. I don't think there hasn't been anything that's been like, I think the one thing was the name of the presentation that our Don't Look Up scientists wanted to call his presentation was The Science of Bullshit, which I thought was a great title. And certainly that's what the conversation was about. I think we may have needed to change that word somewhere in our marketing. But other than that, it's been nothing but supportive, and it's just been a great program. And we just always look forward to bringing it back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Logan. And up next, we have Moises. If you want to give us your presentation.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Hi, Ben. How's it going? My name is Moises Esparza. I'm the exhibitions director of the Media Arts Center San Diego. We manage a single screen micro cinema in downtown San Diego, 54 seats. and we've received the Science on Screen grant a couple of times. It became kind of a showcase of films that our cinema became known for. Really allowed us to connect with our community on a pretty deep level. We actually closed our original venue at the height of the pandemic, and have since reopened at a new venue through a partnership with the University of California, San Diego Extension School. So being able to bring the Science on Screen experience to our new venue was really meaningful, not only for myself, but for my team. We've done programs on food sustainability and food justice. We did a series called Real Science, where we had scientists provide corrective feedback to some outlandish science examples presented on film. And this year, we just wrapped up our 4-part film series for this current grant cycle called Dissecting Visions of Identity and Care in the Future. And our goal was to evaluate how cinema's interpretation of the future frames humankind within intersections of surveillance, immigration, race, healthcare, identity, and AI advancements. And then we were particularly interested in how these technological advancements presented in these films had present day implications for systemic injustices. So the films we screened were Children of Men, Technolust, Coded Bias, and Safe. And some of the themes we explored, for example, with Children of Men, it was embodied struggle, women, migration, and the struggle for safety. For Technolust, we had personal encryptions performing identity and sexuality IRL in URL. And that explored how the anonymity of web spaces allowed individuals to express gender, sexuality, race, and desires more openly. For Coded Bias, we looked at, or the theme was bias, algorithms, bias, and us, fighting back and moving forward, fighting for equality and regulation of algorithmic and facial recognition technologies. And I just, I really want to share that this is a really this has been a very collaborative process for our team. I had a partner programmer, Lori Pina, who brought so many amazing ideas to the table. So not only does this program allow us to foster connections with our community, but also allowed a lot of people on my team to take a very hands-on approach. And just in the last couple minutes here that I have for my segment, I just wanted to share some of the social media collateral. So that's what we had for Technolust, Children of Men, Coded Bias. And this was actually the presentation following Technolust. And we had Max Schaefer, whose avatar is known as Lulu Tentacles. They did a Zoom presentation and they did a motion capture presentation. So that little avatar you see on the kind of lower right-hand side of the screen is Max in their avatar form. So like individuals said earlier, this doesn't have to be boring or dry. It can be exciting. And like I said, it really fosters a sense of collaboration amongst many different individuals. Thank you for inviting me. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask away.
All right, thank you, Moises. And if you want to just stop sharing, thank you. Yeah, it can be varied. Obviously, all these presentations, I love hearing about all these things. And Yasmin, take the floor, please.
Yeah, so hello, good afternoon, and good morning to my fellow Art House Convergence folks. My name is Yasmin Eisenhower. I'm the Executive Director of Amherst Cinema in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I also sit on the board of the Art House Convergence. So it is definitely my extreme pleasure to be here and share this hour with you today. I also just wanted to thank Beth and Kristen. Amherst Cinema is really grateful to be part of, and to the Coolidge Theater as well, to be part of this series. We started out, we're 11, 12 seasons into the program. Our first set of programs were in 2011. So we've had the benefit of having a long and fruitful relationship. We've had the opportunity to experiment with the programs, to figure out what it is that our audience like and what are some of the kind of best ways that we might deliver. So thank you all around for being part of it. In that time, we have about 45 programs that we've offered. And so if you'd like to see that, you're welcome to go onto the Science on Screen to see how we have paired films and speakers. But one of the things that's unique about Amherst Cinema is that we're located in a college community. So within a quick drive are 5 colleges. We've got the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Amherst College, Hampshire College, Smith College, and Mount Holyoke College. So fortunately, we are never really at a shortage for scientists who are not only members of our cinema, but really willing participants to be on our stage, familiar with our stage because they're here both in other capacities as well as audience members. This gives us about 35,000 students in our community, 20,000 faculty to draw from, and 9,000 staff. So Science on Screen is really a good fit, and one that within our patron community, people see as really a respected program and brand. So I wanted to talk about kind of maybe not so much specific programs, but really 3 to 4 opportunities that Science on Screen presents to us. So the first thing is it allows us to see the world differently. So for me, every time I step out of the theater, having experienced it, I get out of my car and I just feel changed. And I think that I'm not unique in that when you bring in a film that is compelling, popular, of interest, you pair it with a scientist who really allow you to kind of dig in and create authentic themes, showcase authentic themes of the film. It allows you just to see the world differently. So an example of that would be, we had a speaker, the director of the Adirondack Council, who came in to talk about the hidden life of trees. And not only did he talk about the hidden life of trees, he made connections to his own, he's African-American speaker, he made his own connections to his homelands through his own study of his family to Scotland, to this very forest where his family were both indentured servants and just had a real connection. So it was amazing to see him come in. The second thing that this program does for us, it allows us to see any given film world differently. And so recently we had a planetary scientist in here, Darby Dyer, who was fantastic. She's been part of the Mars rover projects, and she came in to deconstruct the world of The Martian. The Martian itself, I hadn't seen that film in a long time. It was amazing what she did. She came in, she got a glass of wine, she gave us 10 facts and figures about Mars so that we were looking for clues within the film. And then she sat through this screening with her glass of wine and she talked, she provided running commentary, and it was so much fun. When she was done, she had some of the most engaged questions, because not only are our audience just kind of students, they're also scientists and other academics from kind of adjoining disciplines, so we could really engage fully. And as this one student was walking out, she said, "Oh my God, I want to be a scientist." And I felt like, win. There we go. That right there is the meaning of the program. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is just Science on Screen provides an opportunity to really inspire future scientists and further kind of science curiosity in again, a very authentic way. So one of the things that we've experimented with is a program called Science on Screen Junior, where we take a film that is targeted toward children, really 0 to 10, and we pair them with a scientist. And we, it's challenging because, how do you pair and have, a 3-year-old sit in a theater for an intro? And so we do a lot of prep with our scientists who do that. And I just wanted to show a very quick clip of the intersection of science on screen with our $5 family film program. And it was highly interactive, and I'm happy to take questions as well afterwards.
Is this a fish? Yes. Oh, I heard a mixed. It's a mammal. This is a whale, and a whale is a mammal. Ooh, see, I told you, I'm kind of a mean teacher. I have that reputation. Okay. Is it a fish? Yes. Okay, who can see the fish here? Can you see the fish? All right. What part of the fish do you see? The mouth. What? And the eyes. Good. That's a future scientist over there. All right. What's that called that's hard to see? Does anybody know the word? Camouflage. Excellent. A little easier there. Fun fact about this fish, some fish can walk. This is a goosefish, and a goosefish will walk. You also want to be very careful not to put your fingers in front of a goosefish's face, because they've got big jaws. Okay, so this is a fish.
And so I will just say that this particular speaker, Craig Albertson, did a fantastic job. He has a slide deck. It's very interactive. He's ready to take his show on the road. So if any of you are looking to not have to design one of your presentations and also looking at programming for a younger demographic, this is your guy. All right, thank you so much. I will stop there.
All right, thank you, Yasmin and Logan and Moises again. I think we've got several questions. We'll try to get to everything now. So Kristen and Beth, I think so far all the questions are for you all, but if you want to unmute yourselves, get your video going. I'll start in order here from top to bottom. So this first question that came in is, I am a small one-person Black-owned microcinema structured as an LLC. Can I work with any registered nonprofit collaborator, fiscal sponsor to receive funds for programs?
Yes. That's, yeah, you can partner with, basically that's yes, you could, if you have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor or partner. One of our longtime grantees is the Goldtown Theater in Juneau, Alaska, and for years they've partnered with the local library. And so yeah, that's my answer. But I just want to quickly jump in and want to thank Moises and Logan and Yasmin for their amazing testimonials. I am applying for a new Sloan grant and just want to get like a transcript of the Zoom call and just put it all in there, because you have just, and also I'm totally getting Craig's info from you, Yasmin. So all good things. So thank you for the great work you're doing in your community.
That video was so great. That was so fun. Yeah.
Agreed. That's always fun to mix programming that way. I'll quickly, there was an answered question in the Q&As by text, but I'll just read that out loud so folks have that information as well. So the question was, are there short films on the Sloan list, or are they all feature length? And do people use short films? And the answer was yes.
I can answer it in person if you want. I mean, that's fine. I
yeah,
did it.
Kristen, if you want.
I did it in the Q&A there. So yes, there are Sloan supported short films that are in the mix that you can use. And one of the examples that one of our newest grantees, the Rooftop Films, is a summer series here in New York, and they put on events around the city. A lot of it started on rooftops, but now one of their big venues is the Greenwood Cemetery, which is a giant cemetery near my house, 660 acres. It's a huge cemetery. And they put on really cool events there, and they're doing a series called Cemetery Shorts. And so they're having all these kind of spooky graveyard related shorts. And one of them is a Sloan film. So that's one of their programs. So you can check that out on the website.
Excellent. I can say for Film Scene, we did a short film from a local filmmaker who created a piece of technology that moved along to the movements of dancers and choreography and created a piece of art at the same time. And that was a documentary slash experimental film slash performance. So I think it seems like, short film, definitely there's room for it. So the next question here for the application, do you recommend proposing local experts or non-local experts? We live in an area that doesn't have the breadth of science experts like Boston or other major cities. Is there more funds requested worth it for more interesting pairings?
I mean, I think it's really what's going to work best for your organization. I would take heart. Logan had a lot to say about bringing in people via Zoom. That certainly opened up our world during the pandemic. We have in pre-pandemic, we occasionally did travel people if there's a really compelling pairing, but more often than not, especially if you're looking at like science educators and science journalists, it's not always super necessary, but if you have great ideas and make a strong case for it within the application, it's within what we would fund.
But it's fun to find people in your community because there are experts of all kinds just right around you. And I think that's part of what Sloan Foundation wants to support is just science in our everyday lives and figuring those kinds of connections out.
Yeah, and they also come with their own networks, which is great because even we've had some scientists who, I don't know, if they're like Coolidge regulars or whatever, but they'll send it out to their lab and spread the word, and it just can help boost your audience numbers sometimes. So,
yeah.
Yasmin?
I was going to say one of the things that we really in the past couple of years have tried to pay more attention of. I mentioned that we have a network of 2,000 faculty, but when we start narrowing that down to kind of science related fields, what you start finding are predominantly white and male faculty in there. And so what we've done is really take our time to be a little bit slower, more intentional, to make sure that we find female scientists, that we find BIPOC scientists. And sometimes we do have to go outside of our community, even though we've got this great community to find those people. And so, if that's the case, you also want to give yourself a lot more time for planning to make sure, because you are going to then have to build in travel and all of those considerations.
Right, okay. We've got the questions rolling in. I love it. We're interested in pulling together some pre and post film events that are interactive and hands-on. For instance, stargazing with an astronomy professor after Asteroid City. Can the grant funding be used to support events like this, refreshments, purchasing materials, etc.?
Yeah, I think it can. I think if it's in service of the program, I mean, I wouldn't put the lion's share toward, like asteroid shaped cupcakes or something like that. But I think that's within the realm of possibility. And I love the Asteroid City pairing. So yeah.
Great. Next question here. What is the range of stipends or payments offered for scientists?
That probably varies by venue. I can say the Coolidge, our thinking on it has evolved because early on it was the sense of like, well, we tended not to pay people and they were very happy to do it. But I think that conversation has really changed. And I think, speaking to Yasmin's point about trying to break beyond the like white men in the area, we really feel like it's important to compensate scientists for their time. Sloan has been very supportive of that. So our typical honorarium is usually 300 to 500. I mean, we're asking them to do like a 15 to 20 minute presentation. But it's whatever is sort of reasonable for you. And we do have some scientists. It's usually like the very senior in their field ones who maybe are our Coolidge members or fans who say like, no, I want to donate it back. You occasionally get that, and that's totally like, we're fine with that. But if you have a typical sort of honorarium for other speaker events at your venue, I would say just kind of keep it in line with that, if that makes sense. I don't know if
Right.
I want to chime in to say what they offer or don't offer.
And that's, you would budget for that within the grant application.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, we offered a $200 honorarium for speakers this year.
Excellent. This is kind of a probably a pretty straightforward question, I think. A quick one. What is the alumni sponsorship?
Alumni grant, yeah.
Alumni grant, yes.
Yeah, they clarified, yeah.
Oh, do you want? Oh, you want me? Okay. Basically, we wanted to keep people engaged with Science on Screen, but if they've been doing it for many, many years, lighten the requirements for reporting, and basically, it just once people establish Science on Screen, to be able to still give them support, because we have Sloan sort of has expressed that they eventually want things to become a little more self-sustaining. So it's basically a way for people to get some degree of funding, but they don't have to do the same, like the application's much less. I mean, I don't think the application is particularly onerous. We try to keep it easy and manageable, but it's even a lighter lift and fewer reporting requirements. And there's more info on, if you go to scienceonscreen.org, there should be more info on that, or feel free to email me. But it's only open to existing grantees. Obviously, you can't be an alumni if you've not done a Science on Screen before.
And that's after 4 years or 5 years, obviously.
I think it's after 4, that sounds right. But yes, it's got to be somewhere on the website.
I can look it up while you guys keep going.
Yeah,
sure. All right. Next question here is about distribution fees and booking. Do we need to go through our own contacts, or is there booking support through Science on Screen?
No, we have everybody book it on their own as they would any other repertory film or new film. I mean, there's support in the sense that if you're really stuck, sometimes we get emails like, oh, do you have a contact? But actually the Art House Convergence Google group is always, as we all probably know, who has the rights to this, you're probably gonna get a much more accurate and timely answer from a listserv like that than you would from us. But it's a responsibility of each theater to book.
The alumni grants after it's 5 or more years, after 5 or more years. And it's usually for a lower amount of money as well, but it just kind of keeps, hopefully it becomes a popular program that you want to keep going at your cinema.
Sounds good. Next question. Are design fields considered science enough? Particularly interested in urban design and land use.
I would say
Yeah.
You can look through again if you go through on their website, you can look through events, and there's different topics that things are under, and there's a bunch of different ones, and we can add, I add new topics, different, as people turn in their events to me to get on the website. I've been adding different categories and things, but yeah, it's a pretty wide range as long as you can kind of think, you think outside the box. I mean, as I said, there's one this week I was just putting on social media about, a magician's coming in to talk about demystification of magic. And did I say magician? Yeah. Anyway, there's different ways to pull things in and find the science there. But yes, it should be science-based, but I think those kinds of things are interesting. Land use for sure. You can tie a lot of things in, climate change, sustainability, things like that.
Excellent. And we only have one more question here officially, but we have a little bit of time. So if folks still want to ask questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. This is the last question we have written. It is about numbers. Do you have numbers on how many theaters apply versus how many actually get funded?
That really varies from year to year. It depends on how many applications we typically, this year we funded 40 applicants, and it was a pretty good rate of return. I mean, when you look at like however many art houses there are nationally, and then how many apply. So usually the amount we grant per year is between 35 and 40. And yeah, application numbers, it really, it varies. We did see a dip in applications obviously during the pandemic. And a little bit last year was a little lighter than it had been, just because I think were still trying to get their lives and organizations together, and everybody was stretched thin. So our hope is that now that things are semi-leveling, that we'll have like a really robust crop of grantees. But it's a pretty good odds situation, you know, as long as you make if it's a good application and you make a compelling case for it. And well, one of the things we do is we ask for like 3 programming examples, because as I said, you have to show 3 films. And it's meant to be helpful to the cinemas in that it forces you to kind of map out your programming and what you're looking to do and what speakers you might approach. So then you don't have to like duplicate the work a few months later when you're doing the program. Though that said, we do offer flexibility, because we know what you put in the application might be different than what you actually put on screen. There may be terrifying new topics like AI, or I guess it's not a new topic, but the recent advances, or other things that come up in the world, or a great speaker or a great new film that you want to fold in. So you're not stuck doing what you put on the application, but that gives us a sense of your thinking, and you can very easily just go with whatever is there. And I am seeing a lot more I think you can find a science angle on almost every film, maybe not every film, but there are certainly a lot more first-run films that are touching upon these topics. Like Asteroid City was mentioned. Oppenheimer, I don't believe is a Sloan film, but they did fund the book that it was based on, which is, I believe, called American Prometheus. So if you're showing things any of these films first run, and you want to sort of have like a special like featured science on screen event, that's also totally within the realm. It doesn't have to be repertory. So I said, there are also other Sloan films coming up. So,
and you can also do more than 3. I just want to say that.
Oh, yeah, totally. Go to town.
Go. Some people do, some organizations do 5 or 6, and Coolidge does a lot all year. So once you build up a, potential audience for it, I think you could have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is, I think, maybe for a little bit for everyone, this question. And I'll say for us, it varies, but what kind of event attendance do you generally see? And do you charge a premium for these events? We actually usually charge maybe a little bit less. So
sometimes they're free. We've seen people have a lot of free events and outdoor screenings, but I don't know about the numbers. You guys can talk about those. And I'm sure that depends on your cinema too. If you have a 54-seat cinema, that's the max you could have, right? Why this? Yeah.
Logan?
Yeah, the only time we ever charged more than our standard ticket price is when we did the drive-ins. But at that point, folks were used to that. And then when we've done matinees, if it's a film that'll work as a matinee, we've charged matinee pricing. But otherwise, we charge our standard ticket price. We generally invite, it's varied, but anywhere from 25 to 40 students, if they show their ID, to attend for free.
Yasmin?
So we run Science on Screen in our largest house, which is a 182-seat theater. We have anywhere from, this year it's been 30 to 80 people in attendance. And as far as pricing, when we did the joint family film series and Science on Screen, tickets are $5. We offered 4, one of them was free and 2 were paid, and those are the general admission and member prices.
Yes, we have a 54-seat house, but we've been struggling with attendance over the last 18 months. I don't know. I think everyone else might have a similar story. So, when we do a Science on Screen film, it has higher attendance than what we run as a first run screening the film. And Science on Screen took over our Cult Film Tuesdays this year. So they were well attended, and the price ticket was $10. So it was actually a little bit cheaper than our regular admission, which is $12.
Yeah, we make it free to members, to Coolidge members, because we have underwriting from Sloan. We also have local underwriters, which again, if you are going for a Science on the Screen grant, we're totally open to, there's no like exclusivity or anything like that. You can completely reach out to, corporate sponsors, individual sponsors. But that's been very effective at driving attendance. So ours are generally well attended, but it's been since 2005. So it's kind of a known entity, but it sometimes does depend on the film and the speaker, and the sort of broader rep films tend to do better.
I will say we've had the highest attendance when we've worked with a professor or a teacher that's local, because they bring their students and they promote it to their classes and their schools as well. So.
All right, we have a couple more questions. One that I just quickly answered in the Q&A form, but I'll say it out loud here for others to get that knowledge as well. Is online an option? It is. Am I correct in stating that? If you do an online screen? And we'll quickly go through these last two. A very interesting question here about partnering with another organization. So we're a Sloan grantee and have had a fellow grantee express interest in co-curating or co-presenting a program with us. If we partnered, will we both be able to count the presentation as one of the three required, or do they have to delegate or rather designate who claims it beforehand?
Can't
It's
say
probably case by case. Yeah.
Yeah. If they want to send us the details, happy to explore it in greater detail. I mean, we love the idea of co-presenting and cross-promoting, and the Coolidge did something. We showed Awakenings, because we had a partnership with Oliver Sacks Foundation because they were doing an opera of Awakenings locally. So it was partnered with the opera company and the Oliver Sacks Foundation, and it was Science on Screen. So sometimes the more partners you can pile on, the better. But this, just email Beth@coolidge.org and/or info@scienceonscreen.org, and we can look into that further.
And let's see this question. Looking at the budget template, I see that we're asked to report the revenue. Is this so Science on Screen can track the success of the program, or is it because the grant funding can only be used to cover costs that exceed the revenue?
So it's more for the grant proposal budget, just projecting revenue, it sort of helps us if people are presenting. So some people do have the screenings be free, and that just sort of helps us sort of understand what people are asking for money for. It's not as set in stone as grant funding can only be used to cover costs that exceed the revenue. We don't. It's more just
not a requirement. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to our question asker.
Yeah, and feel free to email if there are any. Again, people can email if there are any specific.
And I think we've come up on time. There's a couple maybe just things that you can consult the website for. There's a question about the length of a presentation. I think that can be up to 15-20 minutes. Suggested it could be shorter.
Is there a minimum, Beth, of time?
There's not. I mean, I think like 5 minutes would not really do it in terms of. Usually, I would say like 15-ish minutes. Some people go really wild. We've had a few people. You almost need like the hook to kind of take them off stage and hit the 40-minute mark.
And you can do it either before or after the screening too. You can decide whether it's easier to keep a house wrapped, keep a house there if you do it beforehand as opposed to afterwards, when some people might get up and leave. So those are some things to consider too, I would think, right?
Yeah.
And you do have to video record one of your presentations to submit to us, and then we add that to our YouTube channel. So we have a channel. So you need to get program releases for each of your participants. But yeah. Oh, someone here says we found a 15 to 20 minute presentation, and a 20-minute Q&A works very well. So thanks, Nick.
Yeah, and I think we're out of time. We made it right up to the 2 o'clock mark.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Kristen, Beth, Moises, Logan, Yasmin, and all of our behind the scenes folks as well. I think this went very well, and I think everyone's probably available on email or
Yeah,
etc. for further
info
questions.
at scienceonscreen.org is the general email, and I'll forward them either to Beth if they're for Beth, or I'll try to answer them myself. So, and the application deadline's August 1st. So everything's up on the website that you can find. You can find all the, a lot of questions, a lot of answers to questions there. So, and follow us on social media.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And join us again next month for another Art House Convergence Zoom chat.